All right, mashallah. I think it's been a while since we had hadith terminology lesson. And I felt, mashallah, falling short. Yani, you don't have to tell me I'm not. I felt I'm falling short, subhanallah. I ask Allah to keep me in the service of the Muslims. Allahumma ameen. And so I want to finish this because we want to get to the next book after this, the Alfiya of Al-Iraqi. And we'll see all kinds of knowledge in there, inshaAllah ta'ala. That's a treasure chest just waiting to be opened. I have the chest. Yani, I can even open it. But I want to share it with you, inshallah ta'ala. Boy, but we can't get to that until we finish this one. So let's get started here. We are continuing in the explanation of Al-Bayquniyah, the Bayquni poem in hadith terminology. And we are reading the explanation of Sheikh Al-Jabarti, rahimahullah ta'ala. And we're going to start firstly by looking at the upcoming line of poetry that we're going to explain. I wrote it out already. Here it is. The author says here, rahimahullah ta'ala, عزيز مرو اثنين أو ثلاثة مشهور مشهور مروي فوق ما ثلاثة عزيز مروي اثنين أو ثلاثة مشهور مروي فوق ما ثلاثة. So this means he is saying, Aziz, the next type of hadith we're going to talk about, insha'Allah ta'ala. Aziz, which means rare, or it means strengthened. Strengthened or rare is the meaning of Aziz. Azizu marwi ithnaini o thalatha. The Aziz is the marwi. So here, this word marwi, here, there's sukun on ya here. Originally, there's a shadda there. Marwi. But the author put a sukun there because he has to keep the beat. Putting a shadda there will break the beat. Marwi means the narration. The narration meaning what is narrated, the narrated report. So he says, Aziz Umar with name. Aziz is the narration of two. Oh, thalatha. Oh, or thalatha, three. Aziz is the narration of two or three. That's what the author says. We're going to explain, inshallah. Mash-hoor, the word mash-hoor means famous or popular. Marwi, same word, also with a sukun to keep the beat. Marwi, so the mash-hoor is the narration. فوق ما ثلاثة, above. He's saying the narration of above. Marwi فوق ما. Oh, no, not of. Not of. Sheikh Al-Jabarti is going to say how it is. Marwi فوق ما ثلاثة. Mash-hoor, the famous or popular report, is the narration above three. That's what the author says. And this word ma, as we're going to see, it's extra. That means it's just there to keep the beat. Here, it's meaningless, actually. It's there just to keep the beat. Yeah, and that's its purpose. It has a purpose, not for the meaning. Its purpose is not to serve the meaning. Its purpose is to serve the line of poetry, to keep it on beat. Okay, so you got the line that we are studying now today, inshallah. عزيز مروي اثنين أو ثلاثة مشهور مروي فوق ما ثلاثة. And you might notice here that he made thalatha rhyme with thalatha. So there's a word for that in balagha, the study of rhetoric and style in Arabic. There's a word for that, but it's not the strongest way of poetry to make the word rhyme with itself. But sometimes you could say the same word but has a different meaning. Then it's not as weak. Well, if it means same thing, you're saying the same word twice, it doesn't have a new meaning the second time, then that's not so strong. Okay, so let's see the explanation. Sheikh Al-Jabarti rahimahullah tabaraka wa ta'ala says, Azizu, Aziz. So, whatever's in parentheses, that's the actual text. Here, this line of poetry I just wrote out for you, he's going to break it apart and put its pieces in parentheses and then explain in between. Aziz, I told you, it means linguistically rare, or it means strengthened, strengthened. In Surah Yasin, when Allah says, فَعَزَّزْنَا بِثَالِث, Allah supported that one. Allah supported those two with a third. فَعَزَّزْنَا, we, Allah that is, supported those two with a third. So Aziz means strengthened, supported, or it means rare. So Aziz, and in the line of poetry, bila tanween, it doesn't have a tanween. Right here, Aziz, you would say Azizun, Azizun, which means yani, an Aziz, a report that is Aziz. But bila tanween lidarura, for the necessity of the poetry, yani the poetic license. I'm going to call it poetic license. The tanween is removed by poetic license, meaning the poet has permission to basically break standard rules. When that's called darura. In Arabic, they call the poet's license to break standard rules, they call that darura. It might mean emergency. The emergency of poetry allows him to break some standard rules. And that breaking of rules, this darura, in poetry, it has a range. Some of it is corny and some of it is decent. And yani in between, there's a range there. So sometimes when the poet is exercising his poetic license, and I'm talking about the Arabic poet, sometimes very nice and sometimes not so nice. So, so mubtada'un, this word Aziz is the subject of a sentence. So we want to know what its predicate is. وسوغ الابتداء بالنكرة وقوعه في معرض التقسيم. This subject, this subject of a sentence, this word Aziz, it's indefinite. And if you don't start a sentence in Arabic with, you don't have an indefinite nominal subject in Arabic, the mubtada won't be indefinite unless there's something that allows it to be. And what allows this to be an indefinite subject here is the fact that it's being presented uh, under categorization. It's being presented under categorization. So here's a new category of hadith. The word itself is indefinite, and it's a subject of a sentence. And what allows this indefinite word to be the nominal subject of this sentence is its being presented in a categorization. Okay. So if you want to ask, you can ask me. Hopefully that's clear for you. And yani, inshallah. Oh, oh, ma'rifah. And it's possible to say this word Aziz here, it's not indefinite, and that rather it is definite. لأنه علم لهذا القسم. It's how could it be definite by being the name, the proper name that is the moniker of this category, Aziz. Then, if we were to write it out in English, it's gonna definitely have a capital. Either way, it's gonna have capital A because either it's the subject of the sentence or it's a proper name. Either way, the beginning of the sentence that is, it's gonna have capital. So I hope that's clear for you. He says مروي بسكون الياء للوزن وحذفها لفظا لالتقاء الساكنين وإثباتها في الرسم. Okay. Now, this word marwi, I already told you, means the narration. It means the narrated thing, that which is narrated. That means the form of this word, it's a maf'ul. Wazn ala wazni maf'ul. That means receptive form. What is receiving the narration, meaning what is being narrated by a narrator. So I'm just going to call it a narration. So the Aziz is a marwi. It's a narration. There's a ya here. Bisukuni ya. There's sukun on this ya. Originally, I told you, there's a shadda there. There's supposed to be, if this weren't in poetry, there'd be a shadda there. Yeah. If this weren't in poetry, there'd be a shadda here, marwiyun. But we need to reduce it. Shadda means two, yes, two letters together. But we need to reduce it down to one letter so to keep the beat. Because the beat depends on the syllables. So an extra letter is going to add a syllable. So little wasn't to keep the beat, the ya is reduced to a single ya with a sukoon on it. And then in fact, you're going to not even say that ya. لالتقاء ساكنين. Yani, because when you read these words together, you're going to say marwithnain, marwithnain. You're not going to say marwi ithnain, marwithnain. So the ya is omitted in pronunciation. لالتقاء ساكنين, because there's two sukoons there. I'm not going to explain that further. وإثباتها في الرسم, but you're still going to write that ya even though you're not going to say it. You still write that ya even if you don't say it. Okay. خبر. It's that's the predicate. Marwi, Azizu Marwi. So the sentence so far means Aziz is a narration. So that's a whole sentence there. Azizun Marwi. Aziz Marwi. The Aziz or Aziz as a name is Marwi. It's a narration. That's a complete sentence there. Marwi mudafun اثنين مضاف إليه. But marwi is part of a compound. So there's another word that goes with it. Marwi ithnain, the narration of two. Of. The narration of two. That's like one thing though. When I say it in English, I'm saying three words. Narration of two. In Arabic, there's only two words. Marwi ithnain. So we would say of in the translation. But you should think about it like it's one thing. Marwi ithnain, like it's compound noun with a dash if you want. The narration of two. Yeah, those two words are together like one thing. مضاف ومضاف إليه أي ألا يرويه أقل من اثنين عن اثنين. What does this mean that it is the narration of two? It means it is not narrated by less than two reporters from not less than two reporters at each level. There is not less than two reporters at every level. It does not mean there are two reporters only at every level. Some scholars said this doesn't even exist. And Ibn Hajar al Asqalani said, Musallam, that's granted. It doesn't exist. Two narrated from the Prophet, and then two narrated from them, and then only two narrated from them, and then only two narrated from them, etc. Ibn Hajar said, granted, it doesn't exist. That's not the meaning of Aziz. Rather, Aziz means not less than two narrated it at every level. So some people think Gharib means one narrated it at every level. And Aziz means two narrated it at every level. And Mash-hoor means three narrated it at every level. So it's not like that exactly. Gharib is one narrated at every level. Aziz is not less than two narrated it at every level. Mash-hoor is at least three narrated it at every level. So take that. فخرج بذلك الغريب. So excluded from what we just defined is the gharib hadith. فإنه ما رواه واحد فقط. Indeed, that is what was narrated by one merely. We say at every level. Narrated by one at every level. Narrated by at least two at every level. Not narrated by not less than three at every level. When we say at every level, you should know that that doesn't mean that it will never change. Yeah, and here we are, over 1400 years after the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If a hadith is gharib, that means one person narrated it from the Prophet until it reached us today. Or if it's gharib, if it's aziz, two people narrated it from the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam until it reached us today. No, it's possible that there's one narrator for a gharib hadith at every level to a certain point, and then it spread more. And like that for each type, for the Aziz and for the Mash-hoor. Okay. وخرج بذلك أيضا المشهور. And also excluded by this definition is the Mash-hoor hadith. فإنه ما رواه ثلاثة فأكثر. Indeed, that is what was narrated by three or more. أو ثلاثة. So the author said in his poem, Azizu marwi ithnaini أو ثلاثة. Here's the line here. He said, Aziz, the strengthened or rare hadith, is the narration of two or three. So he said, أو ثلاثة, or three. The explainer, rahimahullah, Sheikh al-Jabarti says, وَالْأَوْلَى إِسْقَاطُ قَوْلِهِ أَوْ ثَلَاثَةً. What is better is to remove the author's saying or three. Now, if you just remove it only and don't do more, you're going to break the beat. So in terms of the technical talk, in terms of this, the talk of the people of this science, it's better to remove that oh thalatha so that the definition will be not criticized. But in terms of the poetry, if you remove it, you're going to break the beat. So then what you'd have to do is replace it or reformulate the line so to keep it consistent and not broken. قال في نيل الأماني والمعول ما في النخبة. The author of Nailul Amani said, what is resorted to? Yani, what is standard? The standard in the science, according to the experts of this field, the standard according to the experts of this field is what is in the book of An-Nukhbah, Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani's book that we covered already. And yani, I heard Sheikh Samir was going over it. MashaAllah. Inshallah, we'll hopefully get our hands on at least the recording. من تخصيص الاثنين بالعزيز والثلاثة بالمشهور. What's in the book of An-Nukhbah that is the standard for the experts of this field? That two is special to Aziz and three is special to Mash-hoor. Not to say what the author said in this line, Aziz is the narration of two or three. So in An-Nukhbah, he told us, Aziz is the narration of not less than two. Not less than two. Yeah, so it's possible to explain or three to be like that, meaning not less than two. But the scholars are saying it's better not to add this into the definition. انتهى, end quote. ومشى الناظم على ما ذهب إليه ابن منده. And the composer of the Baykuni poem, he went according to the way Ibn Manda went. Yani, also here, although this talk of his is criticized, he didn't make it up. He has a predecessor in that. He has a Salaf in that, which is Ibn Manda. So it means Ibn Manda's statement is criticized too. وبهذا قال الإمام النووي وجلال الدين السيوطي في الألفية وغيرهما. This statement, we'll just put it between brackets for now, parentheses. بين قوسين. قال في الألفية والذي له طريقان فقط له خذي والذي له طريقان فقط له خذي واسم العزيز. Okay. Okay. It's fine. He clarified it in the footnote there. I'm glad they put the footnote there, as if they saw what made me put it in parentheses. So, means وبهذا قال الإمام النووي وجلال الدين السيوطي في الألفية. And this is what An-Nawawi said and what Jalaluddin As-Suyuti said in his Alfiyah, meaning the way we are defining Mash-hoor, the way we are defining Aziz here, this is the standard. That's what An-Nawawi said, that's what As-Suyuti said, that's what Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani said. So these are massive masters here. That's what we're going to say. So if you have a test in hadith terminology, remember, Aziz is the narration of two. Let me say, if you have a test in Baykuniya, or if you take Baykuniya in the future, bi-idhnillahi ta'ala, with one of the mashayikh, then it's going to be clear for you. Mash-hoor. So that's the end of what he has to say to us about Aziz. He didn't give an example here. That's okay. We'll see more, inshallah, as we progress, if Allah permits. Any question? The author says, Mash-hoor bila tanween lid-darura. So now he wants to talk about the Mash-hoor, famous or popular hadith, also without a tanween, for poetic license or by poetic license. The tanween is removed by poetic license. Marwi bisukun al-ya'i lil-wazn. Also marwi, same thing. We have sukun on the ya here to keep the beat. instead of a shadda. مضاف إلى محذوف للضرورة. تقديره مروي رواة. And this word marwi, Sheikh Al-Jabarti is telling us, it is also part of a compound, as I was telling you. He says, however, hold on, please. Sorry about that. Barakallahu fikum. So, Sheikh Al-Jabarti, rahimahullah, he is telling us that this word marwi here, it is also part of a compound. Like I told you before, he says, except that the second part of that compound is erased. It's implied. It's merely in our hearts. And what it is marwiyu ruwat. He's saying it means Mash-hoor marwiyu ruwatin fawqa thalatha. Uh, Meaning is the narration of narrators. The narration of narrators. That's the compound. Narration of narrators, but remove the word of narrators. So Mash-hoor is the narration, and of narrators is implied in what's in our hearts. فوق ما فوق منصوب على الظرفية متعلق بواجب الحذف لوقوعه صفة لمضاف إليه محذوف تقديره مشهور مروي رواة كائنين فوق ثلاثة ما زائدة. Okay. So, Mash-hoor, the famous hadith, is marwi, the narration of narrators, but narrators is not there, it's only implied. Fawqa, fawqa, above, narrators above, mansubun ala dharfiyah. This word fawqa in the text has fatha on the qaf because it is yani prepositional. It's prepositional, meaning it is putting the word marwi in a place, a figurative place, above, over. This is a figurative place because if you say, I need over two men, meaning I need above two men. So it's not really a place you're talking about here. Above means more here. Fawqa, basically above or over, means more than. So that's the meaning, more than. But it literally means above, and that's a figurative place or over. So Mash-hoor marwi fawqa ma thalatha. The famous is the narration above. Yani more than. Ma. So here he says متعلق بواجب الحذف لوقوعه صفة لمضاف إليه محذوف تقديره مشهور مروي رواة كائنين فوق ثلاثة. I don't need to explain that to you right now. It's okay. Really, it's embedded in what I've already said to you. Ma zaida, in the word ma here, like I told you already, it's extra. It's not there for any meaning, really. It is actually meaningless. It does not contribute any meaning to the line. It is only there to support the meter, the beat. فوق مضاف ثلاثة مضاف إليه كأربعة. فوق, above, meaning more than. ثلاثة, three. Like four. Four is more than three. قال الشارح الزرقاني, the explainer, the other explainer of Al-Baykuniyya, Az-Zurqani, the one we were looking at his explanation before, he said, وما عرف به الناظم المشهور ليس المعروف. The way the composer defined the Mash-hoor hadith is not the known way. It's not the standard. It's not the standard definition. Intaha, end quote. وقال في نيل الأماني, and the author of نيل الأماني said, فما جرى عليه صاحب البيكونية من أن المشهور أكثر من ثلاثة, إذ يقول مشهور مروي فوق ما ثلاثة مردود. The author of Nailul Amani says, the way the author of Al-Baykuniyya went to say that the Mash-hoor hadith is more than three. So he didn't say three or more, he said more than three. When he said Mash-hoor marwi fawqa ma thalatha, the Mash-hoor is the narration of more than three, mardud. This is rejected. Intaha, end quote. So these are amongst the things that the one who's studying Al-Baykuniyya for the first time needs to be mindful of. A person needs, for learning the Baykuni poem in Mustalah, a good teacher is going to point these things out, so he won't be confused, or at least be saying wrong things, not knowing. Who wants to be saying the non-standard definitions of these things? And say, when he does that, that's what I took by talaqi. I took that by transmission. None of us wants to. We want to be like the muhaqqiqun, the exact ones, the meticulous ones, the meticulous ones. ومن أمثلة المشهور hadith, and Sheikh Al-Jabarti says, rahimahullah, one of the examples of a Mash-hoor hadith is the hadith, he gives us a nice hadith to benefit from. من دل على خير فله مثل أجر فاعله. Anyone who shows, who points out a good way or something good, whoever shows a good way or points out something good, then he has a reward similar to the reward of the one who actually does that thing. Yani, he pointed out to someone something good. He didn't do that good thing. He just showed someone how to do it, for example. Or he told him to do it, for example, with a good intention. Then he will have a reward similar to the one who actually does it. Rawahu Muslim. Imam Muslim narrated that hadith. There's another hadith similar to that in meaning. Man jahaza ghaziyan faqad ghaza. Whoever has prepared an invader, then he has invaded. Yani, whoever has sponsored a soldier, then he has gone to war himself. That's a literal sense of the hadith. It means he has a similar reward to the one that he sponsored for the for going to war. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. Allah knows best. We'll stop there.